The phone burned alive at 3 a.m. with a banner that read, "We need to talk." Emma said, "Please just call me now." But the typing bubble blinked and vanished. A second alert hit harder, a bank notification showing a charged dinner in Lucas City, 2 plates, 2 drinks, and a flower shop receipt. Emma said, "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." Lucas said, "You're overreacting." It was nothing. The room felt like an elevator dropping without brakes, and her suitcase lay open with folded hope. Jordan said, "Answer with facts, not fear," but her hands shook. Emma said, "That money was our flight fund." Lucas said, "I'll pay it back, stop making scenes." The silence after that felt crueler than a slammed door. A final text arrived, short and sharp, "Not now." She stared at the ceiling where city light cast soft bars, feeling caged by distance and devotion. Emma said, "Did you spend what I saved to see you?" The screen stayed dark, and the darkness felt like an answer. Somewhere, a siren passed, and it sounded like a laugh at her fate. Morning dragged across the blinds like a reluctant apology, and Emma stood over the sink replaying every promise. She remembered Lucas saying, "We'll fix the distance soon," as if time were a door he could unlock later. Jordan said, "He is a pattern, not a puzzle," and the words stung because they fit too well. Emma said, "He wouldn't use me, not like that," and the kettle screamed back. She scrolled to photos of shared screens and pixelated dinners, and every smile felt rented. Lucas said, "I hate drama," and the phrase finally sounded like a shield he hid behind. The city woke outside, indifferent to private storms. Emma said, "If I book the flight, will he meet me at arrivals?" The question scraped her throat. She closed her eyes and pictured their first call, his laugh easy as summer. Jordan said, "What has he shown you lately besides silence?" The room held its breath. Emma said, "I need proof before I cut the cord." She drafted a message that felt like a ledger. Emma said, "Here are the transfers, the dates, the plans we made," and the text looked heavier than its letters. She added, "If this is a misunderstanding, tell me who she is and why flowers," then deleted the last 3 words. Lucas said, "You're being intense," and the reply chilled her better than ice. Emma said, "Intensity is what love costs when distance steals context." Jordan said, "Ask a simple question he can't dodge." She typed, "Did you go on a date with someone last night?" then stared at the cursor blinking like a metronome. The room waited. A siren rose and fell outside, and she wondered what needed saving first, her pride or her future. Emma said, "I'm not asking for perfection, just respect." She pressed send, and felt the tiny quake run through her fingers, like a verdict leaving the judge's mouth. Hours stretched thin, and every notification was an imposter. Emma said, "Maybe he's at work," then remembered the restaurant's late hour. She opened his tagged photos, found a new face in the background of a story, and her chest tightened. Jordan said, "Do not stalk yourself into madness," but curiosity chewed through restraint. Emma said, "I just want the truth, even if it ruins today." The apartment heater rattled like a warning. Lucas said, "Stop policing me," in a pinned argument from last month that now felt like prophecy. She closed all apps and stared at the ceiling's hairline cracks, mapping them like roads out of a city. Emma said, "If love hurts, it should at least teach." The calendar on the wall held a flight date circled in hopeful ink. She didn't erase it. She needed the circle to remind her of the cost. Evening arrived with the sky the color of bruised fruit, and the answer finally appeared. Lucas said, "It was a friend. She had a rough night. I covered it," and the words wore cologne. Emma said, "You used our fund for a friend," and the echo in the room felt like a courtroom. He added, "Don't make this bigger than it is," and something inside her stood up straight. Jordan said, "When people show you the size of their care, believe the measurement." Emma said, "Pay it back before I book anything," and her calm sounded like armor. The typing dots danced, then died. She looked at her passport and the red scarf. The scarf still looked like a promise. Emma said, "If you want me, meet me halfway." Outside, streetlights flickered on, and the night agreed to hold her until she could hold herself. Emma sat at the cafe with her laptop open, the cursor blinking over flight options, but her heart hesitated. She said every dollar was hope stitched into a ticket, yet now the numbers looked like lies. Jordan said, "Why do you still give him this power?" sipping bitter coffee like it was proof. Emma said, "Because without hope, what am I waiting for?" The screen showed routes, layovers, impossible times, and she remembered every late-night video call that felt like oxygen. Lucas once said, "Love is patience," but patience had become her punishment. The cafe hummed with laughter, and she felt like an outsider in her own life. Emma said, "If I see him face to face, maybe I'll know if he's mine or already gone." Jordan shook their head and said, "You want clarity, not closure." She touched the scarf in her bag, the same red one folded beside her passport, and whispered, "I can't throw it away yet." Emma walked home past a row of busy storefronts, neon signs blinking promises she didn't believe. She said, "Everyone here looks like they belong somewhere," while she carried doubts heavier than her purse. Jordan had warned her, "Love should not cost your sanity." But Emma still replayed Lucas's laugh, like a song that couldn't be erased. A florist wrapped roses in paper, and she flinched at the memory of his receipt. Emma said, "If flowers aren't for me, then who deserves them?" The city smelled of gasoline and baked bread, and she felt both hungry and sick. Lucas' last voice note echoed, "Stop overthinking." It was harmless, but harmless had stolen her savings. She pulled her coat tight against the cold and said, "I will decide if I'm a fool or if I'm strong." Each step was both anchor and escape, and the street stretched endless. In her room, Emma laid out the receipts like evidence on a table. She said, "Here is where trust turned into a ledger, and each slip of paper whispered betrayal." Jordan had said, "Paper never lies," and the truth pressed down harder than silence. Emma said, "I built a future with him, and he bought roses for someone else." Her phone lit up with a meme from Lucas, casual, careless, pretending nothing had happened. Emma whispered, "Does he even know what he destroyed?" The walls felt smaller, filled with the echo of old calls. She wanted to throw the receipts, but she stacked them neatly, like order could rewrite the past. Emma said, "If love is real, I shouldn't have to prove it in ink and numbers." Yet still, she folded the receipts into an envelope marked with his name. Emma sat with her mother on a worn sofa, silence hanging heavier than words. Her mother said, "You are chasing shadows across oceans," and the voice carried years of worry. Emma said, "It's not shadows, it's love," though her throat tightened. The older woman frowned and said, "Love without respect is a chain, not wings." Emma clutched the scarf and felt small again. She wanted her mother's blessing, but feared her disapproval more than distance. Emma said, "I just need to see him once more, then I'll know." Her mother sighed, turned her gaze to the muted TV, and whispered, "I hope knowing doesn't break you." The room smelled of old tea and lavender, comfort fighting dread. Emma said, "I can survive truth, I cannot survive doubt." Night came, and Emma stared at her reflection in the darkened window. She said, "I have given him years, and he has given me silence and scraps," and her voice cracked. Jordan's words circled back, "You're holding on to an idea, not a man." She pressed her palm to the cold glass and whispered, "Then why does the idea still burn?" Across the street, a couple laughed under a street lamp, their joy ringing like mockery. Emma said, "I cannot compete with someone closer. Someone real," and her chest ached. The scarf lay folded on the desk, stubbornly red against the gray room. She whispered, "I will not disappear. I will not be replaced without a fight." The night stayed mute, but her own voice felt like both surrender and vow. Emma sat in the library surrounded by quiet, but inside her thoughts shouted. She said, "I cannot focus on words when his silence is the only sentence I read." The clock ticked slow, each second heavier than the last. Lucas had promised, "I'll call tonight," but the night had passed. Jordan's message flashed again, "You are teaching him how little effort it takes to keep you." Emma clenched her jaw and whispered, Maybe effort is different when you live oceans apart. The book smelled of dust and permanence, a cruel contrast to her fragile hope. She scribbled his name on paper, then tore it away, ashamed of her longing. Emma said, if he cared he'd answer by now. Her hands trembled, pen ink blotting like spilled tears. The silence around her felt like judgment. Her phone lit up with Lucas's name at last, but the call ended before she could answer. Emma said, he gave me a ring only to steal it away again. Her chest tightened, as if breath were rationed. Jordan had warned, he feeds you crumbs to keep you hungry. Emma whispered, but crumbs still remind me of bread. The missed call glared like an insult, a taste without a meal. She replayed the notification sound over and over, a siren of what might have been. Emma said, why reach if he won't hold on? The room swirled with unfinished hope, shadows stretching against the walls. Her heart thudded in protest, demanding a voice that never came. Emma sat at a diner counter, untouched plate cooling before her. She said, even food tastes like betrayal when I eat alone. The hum of fryers and clink of dishes sounded like distant thunder. Lucas had written once, I love your laugh, but tonight her laugh was absent. Jordan sat across, eyes sharp, saying, you're bleeding for someone who doesn't notice. Emma said, I just want to believe he'll explain, and it will make sense. The neon sign outside flickered red, reflecting across the greasy table. She stirred her coffee, bitter and endless, whispering, if he lies, I'll know it in his voice. The world kept moving, but her fork stayed still. Late at night, Emma opened her savings app again, staring at the shrinking balance. She said every cent was a prayer stitched into miles I never traveled. Lucas had promised I'll match what you save, but the screen showed only her sacrifice. Jordan's words echoed, stop funding your own heartbreak. Emma whispered, if money measures love, then I've overpaid. The room was still, except for the faint hum of the heater. She pressed her palm against the screen, wishing it could return what it stole. Emma said, how can I believe in us when the numbers are louder than his voice? The weight of sacrifice pressed down, leaving her spine brittle. Emma walked under a gray sky, clouds hanging heavy as her chest. She said, the distance feels like weather that never clears. Cars splash through puddles, indifferent to her storm. Lucas had once written, I'll always come back to you, but she wondered when. Jordan's voice whispered in memory, if he valued you, you wouldn't feel replaceable. Emma whispered back, but what if I am replaceable? The scarf around her neck felt like a chain instead of comfort. She paused at a crosswalk, red light glaring like accusation. Emma said, love shouldn't feel like waiting to be chosen. The wind pushed against her face, and she braced herself, realizing she was already standing in the conflict she feared most. Emma's phone buzzed with a message that shattered the quiet. Lucas wrote, I couldn't tell you, but I've been seeing someone here. The words blurred, as tears welled. Emma whispered, so I was funding a future you built with another. Her chest burned as if air itself had betrayed her. Jordan had warned, where there's smoke, there's fire, and now the flames roared in her face. She said every coin, every sleepless night, every prayer was wasted. The room swayed around her, fragile as glass. Lucas added, it wasn't serious, just a mistake, but the apology felt cruel. Emma muttered, you used me to soften her nights while I starved in silence. She pressed the phone against her chest like a wound that refused to close. Emma scrolled further, screenshots spilling proof. A tagged photo, Lucas' arm around another woman, both smiling without shame. Emma said so it wasn't shadows, it was her all along. The betrayal cut sharper because he had let her find it. Jordan called, Emma, you need to stop now, but she ignored the warning. Emma whispered, he left breadcrumbs of betrayal for me to choke on. The scarf slipped from her lap to the floor, red against the gray carpet like spilled faith. She said, I loved him with the whole of me, and he gave fragments to someone else. The truth pressed like iron on her ribs, refusing to let her breathe. She stormed into the kitchen, heart pounding louder than her footsteps. Emma said, I saved every dollar to see you, and you spent them on her. She slammed her fist against the counter, the sound hollow. Jordan's voice on the phone said, "Don't break yourself for him," but Emma shouted, "He already broke me." She grabbed the envelope of receipts, shaking it like a weapon. The heater rattled, but the room felt ice cold. Emma whispered, "I paid for roses she touched, dinners she ate, nights she stole." She dropped the receipts, fluttering across the floor like white confessions. The call finally came, Lucas' voice shaking. He said, "It didn't mean anything. I still love you." Emma's jaw clenched, her hands trembling. She answered, "Love doesn't steal from me to feed someone else." His silence stretched. Then, "I made a mistake." Emma's throat burned as she said, "Mistakes don't last months. Mistakes don't wear roses." Jordan whispered through her thoughts, "Do not let him rewrite your story." Emma said, "I needed loyalty. You gave me lies." The words tasted like ash, but they burned clean. After the call ended, Emma sank to the floor, back against the wall. She said, "I gave him everything, and he left me with nothing." The scarf lay beside her, red and stubborn, refusing to fade. She whispered, "Maybe this was never love, only longing dressed as hope." The night outside was silent, broken only by the hum of passing cars. Jordan's earlier warning echoed, "You can love someone and still lose yourself." Emma said, "But I refuse to stay lost." She closed her eyes, the weight of betrayal pressing her down, yet somewhere inside, a spark fought to survive. Emma stood in the airport, suitcase in hand, heart pounding louder than the announcements overhead. She said, "If I see him, I'll know whether to fight or to let go." Lucas had promised to meet her, yet every doubt clawed louder. Jordan's voice echoed in her mind, "Don't hand him your worth at baggage claim." Emma whispered, "I need truth, not comfort." Crowds rushed by, families hugging, lovers reuniting, and she felt like a stranger in her own story. Her palms sweated against the handle, eyes darting to every man passing. Emma muttered, "If he shows, I'll face him. If he doesn't, that's my answer." The speakers announced arrivals, but none carried his name. The clock ticked, each minute slicing deeper. Minutes dragged, and still Lucas did not appear. Emma said, "He knows the time, the place, and still he leaves me waiting." The suitcase handle felt heavier, the air thinner. A couple embraced nearby, their laughter slicing her chest. She whispered, "I've been rehearsing forgiveness, but he won't even show." Jordan texted, "You already have your answer," and her throat closed. Emma said, "But why does love make us beg for scraps?" The POS system hummed again, mocking her with arrivals from every city but his. She stood frozen, part of her still clinging, part of her already breaking. Finally, her phone buzzed. A message. "I can't make it. Too much right now." Emma's knees weakened. She said, "I crossed oceans in my mind, and you couldn't cross town." The crowd blurred, her vision stung. Lucas had reduced her faith to a line of excuses. She whispered, "I saved every dollar to see you, but you spent my hope on her." Jordan's earlier warning pulsed louder, "He's showing you who he is." Emma muttered, "Then I must decide who I am." She closed her eyes, holding her suitcase like a shield. For the first time, the idea of walking away felt possible, even necessary. Emma sat on a bench outside the airport, evening sky painted in bruised purple. She said every sacrifice was a ticket he never claimed. Planes roared overhead, reminders of departures she would never share. Lucas had once written, "We'll conquer the distance," but distance had conquered them instead. Jordan called, "Emma, come home, let this end," and her silence was heavier than words. She whispered, "I don't want to carry his weight anymore." The scarf in her lap glowed red under fading light, like a wound that refused to close. Emma said, "I can end this tonight, or it will end me." As night deepened, Emma rose, suitcase in one hand, scarf in the other. She said, "I came for truth, and truth came in silence." Lucas had given her absence as his final gift. Jordan's voice replayed, "Love should lift, not drown," and she finally believed it. Emma whispered, I cannot beg for what is already gone. She turned toward the taxi stand, back, straight, tears drying into armor. For the first time in years, she felt distance not as punishment, but as freedom. The airport lights flickered behind her, but she no longer looked back. Emma sat at her kitchen table, the scarf folded neatly beside a mug of untouched tea. She said, This is the silence after storms, the quiet where I count what I've lost. Lucas's absence hung heavier than his words ever did. Jordan's voice on the phone urged, Do not rewrite betrayal into romance. Emma whispered, But without him, who am I? The savings app still showed emptiness, the receipts scattered like scars. She muttered, I kept nothing for myself, only for him. The kettle clicked off, water never poured, as if echoing her refusal to keep feeding wounds. She said, If love is survival, I must learn to live alone. The words stung but steadied her breath. Emma stepped into her mother's living room, the air scented with old tea and lavender. Her mother said, You are thinner from carrying pain that isn't yours. Emma replied softly, I thought love meant endurance. The older woman sighed, her gaze heavy with both pity and pride. She said, Love should not drain you until only bones remain. Emma clutched the scarf and whispered, Then I must unlearn everything I thought was true. Her mother reached over, resting a hand on hers, the gesture warmer than any promise Lucas had left. Emma's voice cracked, I don't want to be weak anymore. Her mother answered, Strength comes when you finally let go. The words rooted in her chest like seeds of healing. Later that evening, Jordan arrived unannounced, carrying takeout containers. He said, If you don't eat, grief will eat you instead. Emma smiled weakly. You always know what I need before I do. They sat on the couch, cartons between them, laughter breaking cracks into the heavy air. Jordan said, You're not broken, just bruised. Emma whispered, Bruises fade, but this feels endless. He replied, Endless only if you keep staring at the wound. The food was warm, salty, grounding. Emma muttered, Maybe I can start again, without begging for scraps. Jordan smiled, Now you're speaking like yourself again. The room didn't feel so empty anymore. Emma stood by her window, the city buzzing below like a song she had forgotten. She said, I don't need him to define my story anymore. Lucas's memory still haunted, but it no longer dictated her breath. She whispered, He spent what was mine, but he cannot take what I'll become. The scarf hung now on a hook by the door, no longer pressed to her chest like a wound. You made something by a wound. Jordan's words replayed, You're already stronger than the version of you who kept waiting. Emma breathed deeply, exhaling the weight of oceans. She said, I can forgive without returning. The city lights flickered alive, mirroring the pulse in her chest, steady and unbroken. The next morning, Emma packed the suitcase she had once prepared for him. She said, These clothes won't carry me to betrayal. They'll carry me forward. The passport remained in the drawer, but the scarf stayed folded in her bag, now as memory, not chain. Jordan texted, Breakfast tomorrow, my treat, and she smiled. She whispered, I'll save for myself this time, not for someone else's lies. The morning light kissed her face, soft and forgiving. She said, This is not the end of love, only the end of waiting. With steady hands, she zipped the suitcase shut, ready for a journey of her own. Morning unspooled like a promise, quiet and ordinary in the best way. Emma said, Today I choose smaller hopes that I can hold. The kettle hissed, steady as a heartbeat she could finally claim. Jordan texted, Proud of you, and she smiled without breaking. She opened a new budget, line by line, rebuilding what she once poured into distance. Emma said, I'll save for classes, for travel I design, for a future that answers to me. The apartment felt wider, like walls had learned to breathe. She tied her hair, looked in the mirror, and saw a woman still standing. Emma said, I am not what he spent, I am what I keep. The words landed and stayed. Her phone buzzed with a long message that tried to stitch excuses into apology. Emma said, I hear the pattern, not the remorse. The paragraph sprawled, begging for one more chance to waste her time. Jordan had said, "Closure is the story we tell when truth is not enough." She breathed in, slow and measured, and let the words pass like traffic she no longer chased. Emma said, "I won't debate my worth in a chat window." She typed only, "No," then deleted it, then typed, "I wish you healing, far from me." The send icon glowed like a match she refused to strike. She locked the screen and chose silence that belonged to her. Emma walked to the river where the city softened, water carrying secrets she no longer kept. She said, "I forgive you, not to return but to move." Wind tugged at her sleeves like a friend urging her forward. She remembered the airport, the empty gate, the text that ended more than a night. Emma said, "I forgive the girl who waited too." A gull sketched white across the sky and was gone. The ache throbbed like an old bruise, but it no longer ruled. She breathed out until the breath felt light. Emma said, "I am not a ledger. I am a life." The current agreed, pulling the past downstream. That evening, Emma met Jordan for pancakes and loud music that scrubbed the day clean. Jordan said, "Look at you ordering joy." She laughed, real and round, surprised by its ease. The waitress poured coffee, and the cup did not feel like a prop in a sad play. Emma said, "I thought love was endurance, but it's alignment." Jordan grinned, "Write that down before it escapes." She did, on a napkin that held better truth than months of texts. Emma said, "I can want and still walk away." The diner clattered on, unaware it had witnessed a resurrection. Back home, she placed the red scarf in a drawer with the passport, not as a wound but as a chapter. Emma said, "Thank you for teaching me what I will not accept." The room held quiet like a promise it could keep. She set an alarm for a morning run, and a meeting she wanted, not one she feared. A notification blinked, and she let it dim untouched. Emma said, "I'm done auditioning for love that won't cast me." She turned off the light, the darkness kind rather than cruel. And that was the last time his name ever lit up her phone.